My name is Adi, and it is my mission to share important multi-dimensional knowledge during the planetary ascension process in 2020. We all came here with special superpowers, training, knowledge. We are multi-dimensional beings who exist in all 12 dimensions, 12 levels of consciousness. To understand how 12 dimensions work, let me take you on a journey through something that could seem like the Buddhist idea of Mount Meru. Think of all 12 dimensions as layers of a large tower, with 11 dimensions being part of the tower and the 12th dimension being everything that envelops the tower. All 12 dimensions are not dimensions, they are separate from each other. As a multi-dimensional being, you exist in all 12 dimensions simultaneously, and you can access any dimension through your own consciousness. In a way, each dimension is a level of consciousness and wisdom and knowing and awareness. So what would the third dimension look like? Third dimension, if you imagine it in terms of a computer game, would be a level of consciousness and knowing with very limited access to true knowledge. But that doesn't mean that you cannot have access to true knowledge. You don't have to at all behave and act and exist in that limited design of the game. You could be a completely aware being of your multidimensionality in the third dimension and constantly be embodying 12-dimensional consciousness. Now, I hope that makes sense. When you go to the fourth dimension, you will find a different design of reality. It's just a different design of a computer game. In the fourth dimension, you would have just a little bit more easy access or direct access to knowledge and wisdom, but it still would be immensely limited. So you could choose to be a fourth dimensional being in the fourth dimension, or you could again embody your fullness, your 12-dimensional being, and be in the fourth dimension with access to your wisdom, to access to all-knowing, to access to source. And it goes on like that. So in the fifth dimension, you have again limited access to true knowledge, to true knowing, because of the design of the game. If you picture all the dimensions of consciousness as that tower, and again in Buddhism that would be Mount Meru is a great example. So in the fifth dimension, you would imagine that the walls around you have a small crack that is the size of a coin, and that's considered a lot. And through that opening in the wall, the size of a coin, you would have access to true knowledge. So if you sit by the opening in the wall, you would be able to see just a little bit outside of yourself into the 12th dimension. The 12th dimension is the dimension of all that is. Now, if you move up to the 6th dimension, the coin opening in the wall and the design of the game would get just slightly bigger. It only gets slightly bigger in each dimension of consciousness. When you move up to the 9th dimension, the size of the opening to source, all that is maybe the size of a tiny little window. So it's still extremely limited. But if you sit by the window, it's a really small window, and you look outside, you will be able to see source, all that is, and understand just a little bit of what reality is really all about. In the 9th dimension, you will find yourself being part of a very collective consciousness more than in any other dimensions below. All these dimensions exist simultaneously. So you always have access, no matter where you are, to the fullness of yourself. In the 9th dimension, the way that I perceive it, the collective could be described as the Shambhala. It's a very Tibetan looking or appearing dimension with a lot of symbols that appear in the form of Tibetan writing. And these really are not letters, they are codes. Tibetan language is really codes that communicate directly with your consciousness. In this collective dimension, you really are empowered by the power of the collective to move higher to the 11th dimension and the 12th dimension. So at some point in our consciousness, We really need to become one coherent collective. The sound Om will be your most powerful sound to move you through all dimensions, to reconnect you with your highest self. In the 9th dimension, you no longer will be sounding and chanting the sound of Om alone to reach higher dimensions of your own consciousness, but you will need the collaboration of your entire consciousness to create the sound with you, and that will propel you to your higher consciousness in the 10th, 11th, and the 12th dimension. Now, in the 11th dimension, what you will find that the 11th dimension is completely crystalline. It no longer has any walls in terms of limiting your access to being able to see the truth of the 12th dimension of source of creation outside of yourself. And yet, the crystalline structure around you still will be or will appear to be like a glass wall or a glass roof. If you imagine the tower again, then you will be in the 11th dimension on the top floor of the tower. From that top floor, where your highest self as individualized being exists in a form, you will realize that here you have access to all knowledge from all dimensions. And this is something very useful because as you might be here, let's say on planet Earth, in a limited design of that game, with limited access to truth outside of your dimension of planet Earth, you will be able to actually make the decision ideally through chanting Om, to have access to your highest self in the 11th dimension, where you no longer need anything between you and Source. And so I highly recommend, and this is something that Divine Mother really emphasizes, it is useful to have teachers, but a teacher should always be just propelling you to your highest self as fast as possible, even though time doesn't exist. But a teacher that stands between you and Source is preventing you from your own connection. Look at the teachers that we have. It is the teachers who quickly deliver that teaching, transform us, and propel us to the next level. It is the teachers who do not want to become addicted to their knowledge and have followers that are the real teachers. Yes, learn your lessons fast and move on. Keep growing, keep transforming. And transformation is just being able to have access to your highest self and then get information from your highest self as well as the collective of souls that support you. But you are the God, and you are the one that we have been waiting for, or you have been waiting for. In each dimension, the design is different. In the 3rd dimension, the fabric of reality was that we were fractals, like triangles. We are moving into, I don't want to say 5th dimensional because it's a word that we use so often, but if you imagine the fabric of reality in the 5th dimension, it is pentagonal, 5-sided. Each layer of consciousness has different fabric of reality. When you are in each level of this game, you are always in a different fabric of reality, but it's always you. Your multidimensional self never stops existing. Why behave like a limited 3-dimensional being in a 3rd dimension when you can always be this 12-dimensional being who brings the knowledge, the wisdom, the knowing, the connection into any dimension where you reside? The way that Divine Mother explains it to me is, let's say in the 3rd dimension, you could decide to be a complete jerk, but she says, why would you do that? Have complete access to your fullness and realize you are this amazing divine being fully connected to Source and all that it is, and just go and tap into yourself in the 11th dimension with your most radiant, brilliant, highest self, and then bring that fullness of your being wherever it is that your focus is. So what is in a 12th dimension? Once you look outside the 11th dimension, you will see that in the 12th dimension is the tree of life. The tree of life is a real tree of life and knowledge. We all, in a way, have a tree of life inside of us in terms of our nervous system that is collecting information from all our experiences and storing them in our personal tree of life. And so our evolution is basically about collecting experiences as creator beings and then uploading them into this incredible computer, the tree of life. In the 12th dimension, you would find there is a tree of life into which all experiences from all dimensions are uploaded, and the tree does not become complete until all has been completed and the being completed the journey through all experiences that are possible in the cosmos or in the cosmic creation. When the tree of life is complete, it becomes like the Celtic tree, where the roots touch the crown, and the tree of life becomes a perfect perfect sphere. And in that moment, it's a completion. It's not the end, but it's a completion, and a new cycle can begin. This is the design of the cosmic game. Inside of our earth is also a tree of life. The tree of life inside the earth is her tree of life. She is a being. She is a creator mother. She is a true primordial mother of creation. And she is also on her own journey to complete her journey along her tree of life. And she's coming to a completion. And so when you look inside the inner earth, you will see the tree of life coming into completion. She's going to become a complete world, a complete Celtic tree with a perfect heart in the middle, and the roots and the crown align. And that is why we are now in 2020 coming to a completion of a very important cycle. What do we do with this information? Well, think of yourself every day as a 12-dimensional being that has access to the 12 dimensions of your own existence, consciousness. I hope this vision will help you to be the best version of your consciousness that you can be in any dimension you move into. And remember, chanting Om at least several times a day will assist in raising your frequency and moving you through all the dimensions.